Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome back to Isabelle's talk show. And it's Monday. And before we talk about intuition, I would like to introduce my guests. Welcome back, Sandra.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
Sandra Itenson Sweetman has been already on the show, and today she's going to talk to us about intuition. But before she does, I would like to introduce her as I usually introduce my guests. So usually you will find Sandra somewhere between Asia, North America, or New Zealand, and actually she's in New Zealand currently. And her hobbies include all things creative, music, art, and cooking, to name a few. She's the founder of Protocols, Heart, Meta, and Sweet. And Sandra's passion is to assist people to embrace the world of subtle energy, to activate quantum shifts, and become more successful in both their personal and business lives. She also enjoys the online community arena she created called Easy to Be, where like-minded souls can connect, feel at home, and receive inspiration. So welcome back again, Sandra, and tell us about intuition.
Oh, sure. Thank you. And it's great to be back. And yes, I have to say, it's also great to be back in New Zealand after a pause of 3 years. And intuition. When people say intuition, a lot of people jump into this word psychic. Oh, you must be psychic. And along with psychic, of course, you have fortune tellers or, oh, she can read my mind or whatever. So let's get it clear. First of all, intuition is not reading anybody's mind. Intuition is not being a fortune teller. I like, it's a quote I read way back in the 90s from Carolyn Mace, who said, intuition is not a gift. Intuition is a skill, and it's a skill based on self-esteem. So I thought, what's it got to do with self-esteem? Why does, what you think about yourself or whatever, what does that have to do with intuition? When you think of it, intuition is really the words I like to use are accessing your inner wisdom, listening. People will say your gut reaction. And I think it's interesting nowadays how there is so much in science coming through on what your gut and, the vagal nerve and things like that, of how it connects to the brain and how, we're a lot more connected than people have given us credit for in the past. So when we don't believe in ourselves, when you think of it, if you have low self-esteem, why would you listen to that inner voice? It's not going to matter. For a lot of people, I feel that we're born with that inner voice active. And I'm fortunate because I came from a family that, it makes me laugh when I think of my daughter as a teenager, one of them who would introduce me to people as, this is my mom, she's weird. All right. What she meant was, this is my mom. She listens to her intuition, which isn't a common thing among a lot of people. I was fortunate to grow up in a family where subtle energy or invisible energies was the norm. So I didn't have that thing as a kid of don't think that way or stop that or you're just imagining or whatever. It wasn't encouraged. However, it wasn't discouraged. So it was something I simply grew up with. And as I was listening to your introduction of me, I thought, oh, there's that word subtle energy. What does that even mean? Embrace the world of subtle energy. So really, it's about embracing the world of the unseen, the unheard, the unfelt, unknown by traditional methods. Mm-hmm. It's interesting, in the old days in England, intuitive people were called the sensitives. It wasn't that we were sensitive and, our feelings got hurt easily. It was that you were aware. So as we think of, how many times I bet in the audience, your audience watching this, they're going to know, to be able to agree with me when I said, how many times did you get a feeling or you hadn't, something said to you, do this differently, or I sense that, I'm reading the vibe in this room. Really, you're listening to your intuition. Mm-hmm. So for a lot of people, this was talked out of them, this was discouraged, this was against the beliefs of the family or whatever. So they were never encouraged to use it. And as a result, they, and I'm going to use inverted commas, they forgot.
Mm-hmm.
All right. As I do a lot of work with people, assisting them to access their inner wisdom. And I have, this is a great infomercial moment for me to say, I've got a course coming up, which people can find out about when they go to my website, heartmeta.com, because it's, I thought, you know, so I've had so many people say, Sandra, can you teach us a course more about that? Mm-hmm. It's not about teaching you how to be intuitive. It's about assisting you to remember you are. And then all the things that are important of, okay, if you're going to listen to this inner voice, do you know how it's accurate? Do you know how your energy can be reversed? Do you know? So, because in the old days, you know, when we sat with older people, elders or whatever, they passed on this information by word of mouth. And of course, nowadays we Google it, or, you know, we go take a course or whatever. So it's slightly different that way. What can our intuition do for us? Intuition is not about predicting, oh, you know, I've had, you know, somebody say to me, oh, I'd like to have a session with you to see if my boyfriend is going to propose. I say, why don't you ask him? You know, I had another woman who got very upset with me because she wanted me to do a reading to see if it was, you know, appropriate for her to sell her business. And she didn't like my answer because I said, you know, that decision is yours and yours to make. Why are you entrusting such an important decision to someone else? And I don't do predictions. What you're talking about are predictions. And that's not to say predictions cannot be true. Yes, some of them do turn out. However, to me, it's like, you know, they say, well, everything is cast in stone. And I get to add, and there are a lot of stones. So which stone is your consciousness tuning into, right? And she wanted me to do this, and I said, no, I don't do that. And I said, however, I'm happy to have a session with you to assist you to trust your own decision making. So as we get more comfortable with our intuition, as we get more comfortable listening to that inner voice, as we know how to access it, and most importantly, as we learn to really be able to trust it. Because very often, I'm sure if I ask you, hey, Isabelle, did you have a time where your voice said something and you did something else? Actually, I'm going to ask that question now. Did you have a time where your voice said something and you did something else? What's your answer?
Yes, totally. And actually, my inner voice was right.
Mm-hmm. And how come you didn't listen to it?
I probably doubted the answer I got from my inner self and my intuition. In a way, I use my mind instead of using my heart.
Right, right. You said it. And, you know, one of my spiritual teachers said the longest journey we will ever make is going from here to here. Because here to me is knowledge, lots of knowledge, and important knowledge. Here, though, is where our wisdom lies. And wisdom is what we gain, you know, by learning from an experience. And I'm still trying to figure out, as a human race, how can we learn best from, you know, negative experiences? You know, why don't we just opt for learning through positive ones? So back to intuition, sometimes our mind can be so strong because it has a logical, different opinion. When you tap into that vast, deep blue sea of inner wisdom, sometimes it defies logic. I recall one time I was in England with someone, and, you know, having lived in England for 10 years, I knew London pretty well. And we were staying somewhere, and she says, oh, where can I get a taxi? And my intuition said, turn right. All right. However, my mind said, why turn right? That's a small side street. You've got High Street Ken on the left, go left. So I ignored my intuition and she went left. Guess what? 5 minutes later, she came back, knock on the door. She said, the road is closed. There's roadworks. You see, my intuition already knew that. So people will ask me, well, how did it know? Hey, if I knew the answer to that, it's I have no idea actually how much different my life would be if I knew the answer. And so one of the things I think that's hardest for us, most difficult about listening to our intuition or listening to our inner wisdom, is the fact that sometimes there is no explanation.
Mm-hmm.
So
trust. You don't just trust.
And so how do we learn to trust? We learn to trust by healing all the reasons why we mistrusted that. So in the intuition class, we do a lot of work on clearing all the limiting beliefs, which were founded in many cases, from various, situations in this life, or, another life experience we might have had in another realm, another time. So with our intuition, as we learn to trust it, if you read any book on working or on your spiritual path or whatever, self-improvement, there's always this word surrender. And I find that people have difficulty with the word surrender, because surrender means giving in to them or giving up. It's like you're losing the fight, you're waving the white flag, whereas when you think of surrender, is I'm allowing myself to listen to an inner voice that perhaps, just perhaps, may know a little bit more than this mind. And as we allow that, our lives become so easy, because there isn't that doubt. There isn't that, oh, should I, shouldn't I, all that. I was pleased with myself yesterday on how I noticed there was a situation, and the old me would have done a lot of, oh, I should have known better, or whatever. And, there I was, shooting on myself. And as you listen to your intuition more, as you listen to your inner wisdom, all that kind of chatter, all that kind of inner criticism, as opposed to, feedback, positive feedback, that dissolves. And when we, how do we become more intuitive? We learn to let go of why we haven't used it. It's not like, well, I have to learn this technique, or I have to learn that technique, or anything like that. It's about, why have we not listened to this inner voice? Because the other part, which I feel is important when you're talking about intuition, is intuition does not mean, well, I get the answer and everything will go perfectly for me if I choose that answer. Perfectly, yes. What is perfect? Perfectly in the highest sense of the word, because sometimes you may choose, make a decision and it doesn't turn out the way you want, because you're meant to learn something else from that experience. So having good intuition, being accurate, does not mean you will get your way and everything will go your way exactly the way you want every time, every single time of your life. That's not it. However, as you hone this skill, your life becomes, I want to use the word simpler, because when we don't use our intuition, can our brains, our minds ever make life complicated for us, of all the various scenarios and everything else? And as you use your intuition more and more, and as you let go of the need to have the confirmation that you're choosing right, or you're correct, you will find that you get your confirmation. I intuit all the dates of my events, not, oh, is this a lucky day? Is this a good day, or whatever? I just get that, it'd be good to have this on this day. I do use my common sense of, if everyone wants a course and nobody can make it on a Thursday, why would I use a Thursday? I mean, so it's important to be grounded in your decision making as well. But what I find is, I have a friend who's an astrologer, and she has said to me so many times, oh, you've got your workshop on that day. Did you know Venus is in conjunct with blah, blah, blah? No, I didn't know at all. However, she says, that's exactly the right time to do that kind of workshop. Okay, thank you. Thank you, intuition, for pointing me in the right direction.
Mhm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, as for me, intuition has served me after listening to it, because as I was saying before, I used to listen first, but check with my mind. And sometimes my mind would say the opposite, and I would follow my mind. So now I do, and my body reacts. So when I feel really tense, I know that it's not the right way to go.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I was offered a job a few years ago, and suddenly I got like a punch in my stomach, or feeling really, really tense. And I just thought, that's not for me. And thank God I didn't.
Right.
So,
Right. Yes, I think what you're touching into there, which is really important for people to understand, is intuition comes to people in different ways. So what you're talking about is getting into the clairs,
mhm,
the clarity, the clear, which in terms of which invisible way do you pick up the information. So hearing you say that, I would say you're very clairsentient. You feel things in your body. For somebody else, they might be clairaudient. They hear the answer. And
mhm,
no, they're not schizophrenic. It's not like, I hear voices in my head. It's that they actually hear that. Or they can be clairvoyant, where they see a picture, or they see, a color and things like that. And there's another one which sometimes people will say to me, how did you know that? And I said, I just knew.
yeah.
Okay, so it's the gift of knowing, which is claircognizance. So it comes in many, many different ways, which is different. Intuition is different from precognition.
Mhm,
Precognition is when we have a sense that something is going to happen a certain way. And that's not what I would put that under the precognition category, as opposed to intuition. That is something that is different.
mhm,
And in the class, what we talk about is how you tap into your intuition and what questions you ask. If you're in the habit of asking, for example, questions like, should I do this and should I do this? You won't be getting an answer from your higher wisdom or inner wisdom, because in that realm, or that stream of consciousness, there are no shoulds or shouldn'ts.
mhm.
So either you're hearing some guide who's very opinionated on what you should or shouldn't be doing, or people are listening to their own minds. Okay, so when I talk about accessing your inner wisdom, I think what we're doing, if I was able to explain it in quantum physics, I think what you're doing is your satellite dish is picking up a stream of consciousness. I really love Gary Schwartz. I met him actually, oh my gosh, it's over 20 years ago now. He wrote a book called The Afterlife Experiments. And in that book, he looked and did experiments with intuitive or psychic people or mediums, because he really wanted to debunk the myth that this was all rubbish and invented. And what it did was all his strict experiments turned him into a believer. And what I liked when I met him was I thought, yay, he thinks the same way I do. And here's a guy who's a neuroscientist, neurosurgeon, and has all this science background and training, because he felt that consciousness resided outside our brains. So you're sending and picking up thoughts. So here really is our receptor, our satellite dish. And to me, here is our one with all, the best filters and all the spam filters, and, no unwanted ads or spam emails, right? So that really is the difference. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And with intuition as well, it's just like suddenly you feel that it's obvious. You don't know why, but it's obvious the choice you have to make, or as you were saying, right or left to find a taxi. Suddenly it's just like, that's the way it is. I don't know, I can't explain it, but that's the way it is. So,
Yes, because what I feel you're really doing is you've activated that channel. And when I had this actually crazy, almost, yeah, out of control experience of back actually in the 90s, of an experience where I had this extreme rapid opening of intuition, too much, without filters. And it's like, every guide was talking to me, everything had consciousness, and I was in a state of bliss. I felt like, wow, all this love and everything. And it was really helpful for my husband to say to me, you know what, you may be in a state of grace, but you need to come back to this reality and be grounded, because I wasn't grounded. So it's important, as we access that we also keep our feet firmly on the ground here and keep centered. And that is something where, that is a technique part of learning how to be, that woo-woo and still, be sensible and practical and everything else. That part is important, and what filters we can put in so that we don't get into overwhelm. I do see some people where you think, oh, they're having some sort of breakdown. No, they're not having a breakdown. They're actually just in overwhelm from all this information coming in. And it's kind of like, your computer is on an old, system, and here you are, you've had all these upgrades, and the hard drive can't handle it. So it's important for those things as well, for those things to go in. And as we learn to trust our intuition, it makes our lives, to me, more comfortable. What I said about it being simple, because as you say, you just know. In the beginning, to practice, for a lot of people, they have to ask the questions before they get the answer. As you get it more and more, as you said, as you get into that knowing, what happens is you don't even need to ask the question anymore. It just happens, because you don't have to pick up the phone line, hello, dial, 101 intuition. It's like it's already there, and the answer is apparent. And so that part is so much better as well. Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Yeah.
So finding a space as well, so declutter our
Mm-hmm.
so we give room in a way for all this information to channel.
Yes.
So that would be, I think, the first thing to do, as you were saying. Just get rid of all the limiting beliefs, all the fears, what clutters in a way.
Yes, actually. Mm-hmm. And before you even get rid of those, some philosophers call it taming the monkey mind. Mm-hmm. It's like when you have all this chatter, you can't hear, you mm-hmm. can't sense, you can't feel your intuition. That would come later. And so what happens, which is important there, is that you actually, to me, intuition is like the space between the lines in a book, on a page. So as you learn to quieten that mind, you'll be able to sense, hear, feel your intuition so much more. So again, you're giving me a nice moment to talk about, one of the topics we cover in that class is
yes, please do.
How on earth do you quieten that mind? If you have a mind that's constantly talking to you, I call it, oh boy, when I was younger, I remember in my 20s and 30s, I call it, making casseroles all the time. It's like you're stewing, right? I would wake up in the middle of the night and rehearse these imaginary conversations with people of, okay, I'm not happy with the babysitter. Well, she's going to come and I'm going to say this. And when she says this, then I'm going to say that. Oh, but what if she says that? Well, then I'd have to do, you would stew like that for 2 hours. What a waste of time and energy. As you learn to listen to your intuition, it's like the way to deal with it comes to you. And it's like simplifies your life. So, it not only declutters your thoughts, it declutters your life in terms of all those unwanted, invisible obstacles we put into manifesting. So the better you get at this, the better you get at manifesting, because there's a clear path. There isn't all this white noise in the way of things coming to you as well. Yeah, for sure.
So Sandra, thank you very much, and tell us about your course. I mean, I'm
Yes, well, this course is actually going very often. I do courses once every 2 weeks. I feel for this one, though, it's important that we're going to be doing it once a week. And for people, I love New Zealand. The only drawback with New Zealand is normally if I'm in North America or in Asia, I can, have live calls with people, North America, South America, Asia, and Europe. But here in New Zealand, with our time difference, it's difficult to get everyone in. So for some people, they will be missing out on the live call. However, they will be recorded. And for the people who cannot make it due to time zone constraints, I will arrange a Zoom call for a Q&A with those people at the time that, so I will do most probably a Europe time Q&A in addition to the other Q&As, just so that those people can benefit as well. So this will be an 8-week course, and we will be dealing with all the topics of what is intuition, how do you get accurate, what are filters, why do you need filters, how do you heal your doubts, what intuition can be used for, what it is, what it isn't. And most importantly, what I love about doing events like this is they are what I call play shops, where no, this isn't you looking at, me lecturing on Zoom. You get to experience it. We get to do a lot of practical work so that you can actually see and feel and hear it happening and discover, okay, which kind of intuitive am I? Am I more a feely person? Am I one who can hear? Do I see in pictures? So there will be a lot of exploration that way as well.
Brilliant. So audience, if you're interested in Sandra's course, you've got the website in the description and as well here on the screen, so you can contact Sandra and ask for more information. So Sandra, thank you ever so much for your presentation on intuition, and so people now know how to trust themselves. But I'm sure with the course they will get even more information about what type of intuitive they are. So next week my guest will be Isabelle, and we are going to talk about how to choose the career you love. So that's going to be interesting, and maybe we can actually use the intuition for that. So
definitely. And just before we close, I hadn't mentioned, I really invite everybody to come and join our community, Ease Into Being. You'll be able to find that on the website as well, because there's lots of intuitive stuff already up there for people to look through. And also you'll get to meet a community where everybody is already using their intuition. So if you're at all interested in exploring just what kind of people are there, you'll find it's very interesting to see they come from all different, careers, professions, and are on their way to using their intuition. And the reason for that community is really to have a place where people feel comfortable doing something that is perhaps not quite as normal to a lot of people, but it's totally natural to us. Yeah, thanks a lot. And thanks for inviting me to be a guest again. I love being on your show. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sandra. And obviously, if you've missed the previous talk shows, don't worry about it. Just check the YouTube channel, Phoenix Coaching and Training. Click on the little bell so you get all the notifications and you won't miss any. So thank you again, Sandra. Audience, thank you for listening and tuning in today. And I'll see you next week. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.